Have you ever felt something deeply inside your heart, but when you tried to explain it in English, the words completely disappeared? Sometimes emotions feel so clear in our minds, but the moment we start speaking, everything suddenly becomes confusing. And that can make conversations stressful, especially when we want people to truly understand us. Yes, and this happens to so many English learners around the world. You know exactly what you feel emotionally, but your vocabulary suddenly becomes very small. Everything turns into simple words like sad, angry, stressed, frustrated, or tired. Exactly. And sometimes one small word has to carry 10 different emotions at the same time. For example, someone says, "I'm tired," but they actually mean emotionally exhausted, overwhelmed, disappointed, and mentally drained. That is why emotional vocabulary is so important in real life English. Today, we are going to help you express emotions more clearly, naturally, and confidently. This is not about using perfect English or complicated vocabulary. It is about using honest English that sounds calm, mature, and real. Sometimes people say, "I don't know how I feel," but often that is not completely true. The real problem is that too many emotions are happening at the same time. And when emotions become crowded together, it becomes difficult to separate them clearly. Exactly. A person may think they are angry, but underneath that anger, there may be hurt, disappointment, fear, or loneliness. Or someone says they are fine when they are actually emotionally exhausted and disconnected from everyone around them. That is why emotional awareness is an important communication skill. A very useful phrase here is emotionally drained. When someone feels emotionally drained, they are mentally and emotionally exhausted, not just physically tired. You can say, "I felt emotionally drained after that conversation yesterday." Another useful phrase is feeling overlooked. For example, you can say, "I felt overlooked when nobody asked for my opinion during the meeting." That sentence sounds much more natural and specific than simply saying, "I felt bad." You can also say, "I felt disconnected from everyone today." That sentence describes the feeling of being around people without feeling emotionally close to them. And honestly, many people experience that feeling from time to time.
When emotions become strong, many people react too quickly. And unfortunately, the first sentence we say during emotional moments is not always our best sentence. That is why calm communication is extremely important.
Exactly. Instead of attacking another person immediately, we can explain the emotional experience more clearly. For example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," you can say, "I felt ignored when I tried to explain myself." That sentence sounds calmer, clearer, and much more emotionally mature.
Another example is replacing blame with explanation. Instead of saying, "You embarrassed me," try saying, "I felt embarrassed when that was said in front of everyone." That small change completely changes the tone of the conversation.
Yes, because now the focus is on your emotional experience instead of attacking the other person. And when conversations sound less aggressive, people are much more willing to listen carefully. That is one of the most important communication skills in both English and real life.
You can also say things like, "I felt anxious when I didn't hear back from you," or "I felt pressured when I had to answer immediately." These sentences sound calm, respectful, and emotionally intelligent.
Many people avoid emotional conversations because they want to avoid conflict. They stay polite, smile normally, and say, "No problem," even when there is definitely a problem. But hidden emotions usually do not disappear. Exactly. Those emotions become bottled up over time. The phrase "bottled up" means keeping emotions hidden inside for too long without expressing them. And eventually,
emotional pressure becomes too heavy.
Then suddenly, one small situation creates a huge emotional reaction. The reaction looks dramatic, but usually it is connected to older emotions that were never expressed properly. That is why healthy communication matters so much.
Instead of waiting until emotions explode, we can communicate earlier and more calmly. You can say, I don't want this to build up, so I wanted to mention it now. That sentence sounds honest without sounding aggressive.
Another helpful sentence is, this may sound small, but it stayed with me. I really like this phrase because it respects the fact that small moments can still affect us emotionally. And sometimes small emotional experiences become much heavier over time.
Anger is one of the hardest emotions to express in a healthy way. Very often, anger is not the deepest feeling. It is protecting another emotion underneath. That deeper emotion may be sadness, disappointment, fear, rejection, or feeling unappreciated.
A very useful phrase here is feeling taken for granted. When someone feels taken for granted, their effort is expected but not appreciated. You can say, I felt taken for granted after everything I did for the project.
That sentence sounds much clearer than simply saying, I'm angry. It explains the emotional reason underneath the frustration, and that creates a better chance for understanding.
Another important phrase is lash out. To lash out means reacting suddenly and angrily, usually by saying something hurtful. For example, I didn't mean to lash out. I was feeling overwhelmed.
One communication strategy I really like is this: lower the accusation and raise the clarity. Instead of saying, you never respect me, try saying, I felt disrespected when I was interrupted. That sounds much calmer while still communicating the emotional truth.
Exactly. Emotional communication becomes healthier when we focus on clarity instead of blame. And honestly, calmer communication often creates stronger relationships in the long term. People feel safer when conversations stay respectful.
Sometimes, even when we explain ourselves calmly, the other person may not respond well. They may become dismissive and act like our emotions are unimportant. And honestly, that can feel extremely painful.
Yes, a dismissive response can make people doubt themselves emotionally. Someone may say things like, you're too sensitive, or it's not a big deal. And those responses can make emotional conversations even harder.
But your emotions still deserve clear communication. You can calmly say, I understand you may see it differently, but this is how it felt to me. That sentence sounds firm without sounding aggressive.
Another strong sentence is, I'm not asking you to agree immediately. I'm asking you to listen. I think that sentence is extremely powerful during emotional conversations because sometimes people need understanding before solutions.
You can also say, please don't minimize this. The word minimize means making something seem smaller or less important than it really feels. And that phrase communicates emotional boundaries very clearly.
Good emotional communication is not only about speaking clearly, it is also about listening carefully when another person opens up emotionally. And that requires patience, empathy, and emotional maturity.
One very important word here is validate. To validate someone means showing that their feelings make sense emotionally. It does not mean agreeing with every detail of the situation.
It simply means acknowledging the emotional experience respectfully. For example, you can say, that sounds really difficult. Or, I understand why you feel that way.
Another very kind sentence is, thank you for telling me. That sentence makes people feel emotionally safe and respected. And emotional safety is extremely important during vulnerable conversations.
Sometimes people immediately start giving advice instead of listening carefully. But often people do not need solutions immediately. Sometimes they simply need someone to hear them without judgment.
That is why this question is so useful. Do you want advice? Or do you just want me to listen? Honestly, that one question can completely change the quality of a conversation. It shows emotional respect and maturity.
Setting healthy boundaries. Talking about emotions does not mean sharing everything with everyone. Emotional confidence also means knowing when to open up and when to protect your emotional space. And healthy boundaries are an important part of communication.
Exactly. Opening up should happen with people who feel emotionally safe and respectful. If you are not ready to talk about something, you can say, "I'm not ready to discuss this yet." That sentence sounds honest and respectful.
You can also say, I need some time before I can explain this properly. That gives you emotional space without creating unnecessary conflict. And honestly, taking time to think carefully can be very healthy.
If someone keeps pushing too hard, you may need stronger boundaries. For example, you can say, "I'm not comfortable discussing this right now." Or, "I need this conversation to stay respectful."
Those sentences sound calm, mature, and emotionally balanced. Healthy boundaries are not cruel or selfish. They simply protect emotional well-being.
Another very important emotional skill is composure. Composure means staying calm and controlled, even when emotions are strong inside. It does not mean hiding emotions completely.
Exactly. It means expressing emotions carefully and thoughtfully. In difficult conversations, composure gives people time to think before reacting emotionally, and that can protect both relationships and communication.
For example, you can say, "I need a moment before I respond." Or, "I'm emotional right now, and I don't want to say this badly." Those sentences show emotional awareness and maturity.
At work, you can also say things like, I need a moment to process that information. Or, can I ask a question so I understand clearly? Professional communication becomes much stronger when emotions stay calm and respectful.
Sometimes confidence is not speaking quickly or loudly. Sometimes confidence is slowing down enough to choose the right words carefully. And honestly, that kind of confidence feels very powerful.
Talking about feelings confidently does not require perfect English. It requires honesty, calmness, and enough language to explain yourself clearly. And simple English can still sound thoughtful, natural, and emotionally intelligent.
The goal is not perfection. The goal is connection. We hope today's conversation helps you express your feelings more naturally and confidently in English. And we hope these phrases become useful in your everyday life.
Remember that emotional communication is a skill that improves with practice. The more honestly and calmly you express yourself, the more confident you will become. And confidence grows step by step.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today. We truly appreciate you listening, learning, and practicing with us. And we hope to see you again very soon.
This is Anna. Take care of yourself and keep practicing your English every single day. And remember that your voice and your feelings matter.
And this is Jake. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep expressing yourself with confidence. Bye, everyone.
But growth often requires quiet. Some of the most important realizations happen in silence. People discover what truly matters when distractions disappear.
That's uncomfortable for many people at first. But eventually, silence becomes calming instead of frightening. It creates space for reflection.
Before we finish, I want listeners to remember something important. Life does not require perfection. You do not need to have everything figured out today.
You simply need to become a little more conscious, a little more present, a little more intentional with your time and attention.
And honestly, small moments matter more than people realize. A peaceful morning, a meaningful conversation, a quiet walk outside.
Those ordinary experiences often become the most valuable parts of life. Not because they are dramatic, but because they are real. Presence gives them meaning.
So if someone listening today feels overwhelmed or lost, I hope they remember this. You do not need to transform your entire life overnight. You only need to take one meaningful step forward.
One honest conversation. One small habit. One moment of courage. That's enough to begin creating change.
And most importantly, remember that your life is happening now, not someday in the future, not after everything becomes perfect.
Every day matters. Every conversation matters. Every moment of attention matters.